The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, the space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
Alrighty. So today we have a question from Nick, who writes to us from Portland, Maine. And Nick writes, another killing by ICE in Minneapolis. I really cannot understand how those idiots in the administration and many in the public can justify what is clearly a murder. I see that Trump is recalling ICE Barbie and Bovino while sending Homan in to clean up the situation. I listened to the podcast to try to make sense of what I see as a decline in America. Now it seems the administration has issues with statements that the NRA isn't happy with. Sometimes you guys give me hope, and sometimes I just think maybe it's time to move to somewhere off the grid. So my question is, does the Homan move indicate that the administration understands how badly they have screwed up? Are Bovino's and ICE Barbie's days numbered? The spending bill will be decided this week. Will the government shut down, or do you think Republicans might get their collective heads out of their collective asses and agree to defund ICE to keep the government open? What do you think the strategy of the Democrats should be moving forward on the votes this week? Also, where are those Epstein files? Excellent questions, Nick. Thank you so much. And I do have a question.
Sure.
That goes with this.
You have a question. All right, let's have it.
ICE's funding is under the badly named and perversely named Big Beautiful Bill. And I understand also that the Republicans want to have an so-called executive action. Right, the House has or an executive decision or whatever it's called. So the House has passed funding, and they're out until Monday, which is after the deadline for government shutdown. And the Senate is having an argument. But since ICE's funding is under the Big Beautiful Bill, which is a terrible name, as I said, and that has already passed, what actually can be done to defund or to get rid of? I mean, would that have to be an executive action at this point, since the House has already now passed more funding? Can the Senate say, no, we're not going to fund this, and shut the government down and say we're shutting it down until November, and then the House can override it? I'm just wondering what actually in a practical manner could be done. And I know that Bovino and Noam are now off to the southern border, and Homan is supposed to clean up the mess.
Can you imagine sending in Homan to be the voice of reason?
Mess. Yeah, yeah. Wow. Wow. I mean, just think about that for just 1 minute.
I wonder if his first thing when he gets to Minneapolis is to see whether they have a kava in the Minneapolis Mall. You know, so he can go get himself another shopping bag. You know, so
go ahead, please.
I don't think the legislation here is very clean at all. I think I saw that Chuck Schumer is asking for a carve out basically of ICE from the rest of it, so that we can avoid a shutdown, and that all they want to really do is defund ICE to the point where they can get ICE under control, because right now the funding for ICE makes it possible for them to create, I forget what it is, the 9th largest army in the world or something like that, right? And clearly these guys are not up to the task. I mean, their recruitment has gotten way ahead of the capabilities of the people that they're recruiting, And so what we're finding is people with really bad tempers, unprofessionalism, inability to de-escalate. Really, I mean, if there was some thought to the fact that the guy who pulled the gun out of Alex Preddy's holster accidentally fired the gun, which set off the rest of it. That turned out not to be true, which, doesn't really help Alex Preddy any. But it turned out that that gun had not been fired. They have the gun. They have the gun somewhere. I don't know who's got it right now, and whether there's a law enforcement entity that has control of that gun. But from what I understand, that gun was not fired, which means that somebody else pulled out a gun and started firing it. That gun needs to be confiscated. That this all needs to be investigated, and we're not really seeing a whole lot of cooperation on the part of the federal government to help with the investigation in both the Renee Good and the Alex Preddy cases. So those are things that have to stop. I mean, I think that people need to understand is that murder is a crime. This is murder. This was not in any way justified. And the fact that they rushed out to suggest that it was in some way justified really makes them almost an accomplice after a fact, and may in fact make them an accomplice after the fact. And I think Kristi Noem needs to be more careful. I think Trump needs to be more careful. Vance needs to be more careful about how they're interfering with law enforcement processes when it affects something, their child or whatever. Yeah, go ahead, Brooke.
Well, look at Stephen Miller. Oh, this is a terrorist or whatever it was that he said, or this is an assassin. And Trump saying, well, he shouldn't have brought a gun when, in fact, and as our questioner Nick pointed out, the NRA saying that you have a right to carry, and he had Alex Preddy had a concealed carry permit. And this is not the first time, as I understand it, that a person with a concealed carry license had a gun removed. I think someone else who was stopped, but not murdered, had informed ICE or Border Patrol that they had a concealed weapon in the vehicle, and had the firearm taken away. But I keep thinking about the difference in response from the conservative or MAGA between what happened here and Kyle Rittenhouse, who brought a gun to a protest and used it and then was exonerated. Is that correct? Oh, Kyle, so and how his Second Amendment right and to bring a weapon and to a protest, and how he shouldn't have been he was exercising his Second Amendment right and he shouldn't have been arrested or this or that or whatever. And now here's this poor man, Alex Preddy, trying to help somebody else who never touched his weapon, just with a phone in his hand and his other hand raised, is accused of being an assassin. And
yeah, well, obviously that's a huge problem for this administration, because they're so quick to circle the wagons and so quick to jump on a side that they're really not thinking these things through. And we've seen a statement now. Stephen Miller says that he's throwing basically the Border Patrol agents there under the bus, in a sense, saying that they're not following the protocols that they've set for them, which clearly puts them, the agents, in harm's way for legal purposes, where you really need to climb up the ladder there to whoever is putting these obviously unqualified, obviously untrained people in a position where this kind of thing can happen. And it's the people who are in charge that need to be held accountable for it, as well as, the shooter, the two shooters, need to be held accountable. But it's the people that put them there in that place in the first place that really have caused this to happen. And, looking into the whole thing from who they're recruiting, how they're recruiting them, how they're training them or not training them. This idea that I keep hearing that they only have 47 days of training because Trump is the 47th president. And so they wanted to somehow create some kind of congruence there is insane, right? I mean, we have everybody out there, hopefully, no matter what your political orientation has to say that is an insane thing to do. Ordinarily, a law enforcement officer gets trained for 90 days, and then we've cut it in half because Trump is the 47th president. This is that's some bizarre, I don't even know what logic it is. But hopefully this is the nadir of it, and we can start building back towards some kind of trust. One of the things that has to happen is that ICE has to leave Minnesota. They've got to back out. And I don't, generally speaking, Trump is not one of these people who likes to be told what to do. He softens a bit in his tone for, in both cases, for some really disturbing reasons. As far as the Renee Good murder is concerned, he softened his tone because he discovered that her parents, including mostly her father, are Trump supporters. And for him, that means that this is now a tragedy because the daughter of a Trump supporter has been murdered by his people, is just so out there. We're really dealing with some seriously deranged people at the very top. Now, Corey Lewandowski's name is coming up because Corey Lewandowski has a relationship with Kristi Noem, and he's the one who's really pushing the buttons behind the scenes. And we kind of know about his utter lack of empathy when he went womp womp when somebody had been badly hurt or murdered. I don't remember what the circumstance was. So we're in sort of a quagmire right now that there are solutions to, but the solutions are going to have to come from the administration, and the solutions are going to have to begin with them saying, okay, we made some mistakes here. We're gonna back on out and start living in reality again. I'm not all that hopeful that that's going to happen, but the other is to move to Maine to be off the grid. Actually, Nick, because I always thought living in Maine automatically kind of took you off the grid. Maybe I'm mistaken about that, but but I'm not I don't know how much further off the grid you want to be. The next step would be Canada, I do believe, geographically anyway, and hopefully we're not there yet.
I mean, all right. So for the first part of this, sending in Homan, yeah. Think about that for a minute. I mean, that's your best, that's your best answer to this. Well, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, Homan's got some, marching orders, de-escalates this, and does decide to start moving, ICE out of the area there, because they have no place to be there, and there's no way I think that they can regain their credibility, at least not in Minnesota. So yeah, it's probably time that they went by the wayside from the Minnesota thing. Yes, the NRA's statements were not taken. The statements made by Kristi Noem about you shouldn't be carrying your weapon. Yeah, that didn't go over really well with the NRA, as you would expect. However, I was watching the one person who used to be a spokesman for the NRA, who now has a podcast. She was talking about the statement that was made, and it was kind of funny. She really kind of talked it back a little bit. Yeah, she made the thing. Well, I've shown up at protests with guns and this, that, and the other, but there's a responsibility there by the person, yada yada yada. So it was a lukewarm at best response to this, but there was a little bit of pushback, and as well there should have been. Is ICE Barbie's days and Bovino's days numbered? Gee, I would hope so. I mean, I really would hope so. But again, we'll see what happens. This is a decision that Trump has to make, or the people that are controlling Trump, such as Stephen Miller, they have to make. So we'll see exactly where this plays out. You would think any other administration that had this big of a disaster happening, sure, they'd been out on their ear a long time ago. It would have never gotten to this point. But this is the point that we're at right now. So, when it comes to Minnesota, that's basically about it. Now the spending bill. Well, Brooklyn, what you got to understand is, yes, the big, beautiful bill passed, but we're talking about funding the government, which means funding the big, beautiful bill. And whether Trump likes it or not, the purse strings are controlled by Congress. That's all there is to it. Could they shut this down? Absolutely. Would that be a bad thing? Absolutely. But now the question is, what's the Republican strategy going to be? Are they going to agree with the Democrats? And we hear them talking about how bad this whole situation looks for them and the administration. Now the question is that a true estimation on their part? Do they really think it looks that bad? Because if they do, they're probably going to have to do something as far as ICE's funding is concerned.
So where are the Epstein files? As I understand it, like less than 1% have been released. And all this, do you think that all this is just a distraction? I mean, look at the response Trump had now to Prime Minister Carney's speech and to the Canadian decision to stop purchase of the F-35s and go with the Swedish Gripen, which will bring jobs to Canada in manufacturing. Now Trump is saying, well, we'll just fly F-35s into Canadian airspace anytime we want because you can't defend yourselves unless you buy the F-35s. We'll put on 100% tariffs unless you back off from the China trade deal that you made. And according to Scott Bessent, Prime Minister Carney walked his statements back, and according to Carney, he did not. So there's all kinds of wrangling now, and I'm much more inclined to believe Carney over Bessent. And they're talking about two different things. Trump is talking about a free trade agreement. Carney is talking about a small agreement with China, agricultural products from Canada having reduced tariffs or no tariffs for electric vehicles from China, not a free trade agreement writ large. So it's just a distraction, perhaps. Venezuela, we're going to have Rubio testifying about that on Capitol Hill today. And so are these all distractions from Epstein?
I would hope not. I would hope that murdering a U.S. citizen in Minneapolis was not being used as a distraction. And if there's a legitimate distraction, this is it. Somebody being murdered and the actions of ICE in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, I'm sorry. That's not the standard distraction. Yeah, talking about Carney and all this other baloney, yeah, that's distractions. But I cannot see. Somebody said to me, "Well, you guys are over sensationalizing this thing in Minnesota. You over sensationalize this."
Who said that?
Oh, doesn't matter. But I mean, seriously,
that's an unbelievable comment.
Yeah. Well, you're over sensationalizing it because you don't like Trump. Well, no, it's not that we're over sensationalizing because we don't like Trump. It's being sensationalized because it deserves sensationalization because this is somebody being murdered.
Two people.
And more than one person.
Well, I mean, but I'm talking about the last one. I mean, the most recent.
The last one.
Yeah.
Right.
So, again, to me, that is an absolute tone-deaf response, but it's a response that I'll be honest with you, it wasn't unexpected. This is the one case where I will say it's a distraction because it should be. It should be. The Epstein files, who knows whenever you're going to see those. Who knows what you're even going to have access to when it comes to those. But this here, this murder, yeah, this is something that we really should be paying attention to, because it is fundamental to law and order here in the United States.
Well, Trump is now saying that these are paid agitators and, this and that. And I think that he is laying the groundwork to make the outcome of the 2026 midterms, this year's midterms, go the way he wants it to go. Because apparently if the election were held now, he would lose both houses badly. And the more,
well, I don't know about badly, Brooke. He
like
definitely
40 seats in the Senate. This is I was listening to Aaron Parnas, the Parnas perspective, and that was what a recent poll said. And according to Aaron Parnas, and yesterday I listened, and that was what the poll said yesterday.
Well, let me just say that I think that that's extremely wishful thinking. The logic of the more common logic to this is that yes, they will definitely lose the House of Representatives. There's really no doubt about that in pretty much anyone's mind. But as far as the Senate's concerned, they need to pick up 4 seats. They have an opportunity to do that, but that's not. I mean, there won't be 40 seats changing in the Senate.
Okay. Well, in any event, Trump needs to be sure that he wins both houses and holds on to them. And he feels the American public is the enemy because his policies are perfect and wonderful, and we, the public, don't understand that he's wonderful and perfect. And we should understand that. And we have to vote the proper way, the right way, and keep America going the right way, which is his way, to keep him where he should be. And his people where they should be. That's basically, I think that he had an interview with, Kristen Welker, and he was talking about how he didn't, Trump, I mean, and he didn't understand how you could win the presidency and not win the midterms, and that he couldn't understand how the American public could possibly reject his policies when everything was going so well.
He's not a student of history.
No, but he maybe other people's policies, but he couldn't understand how anybody could reject his because everything was going so well. When obviously he's not paying attention to the outcomes of his own policies. So, have we answered Nick's questions? All of Nick's questions?
Well, other than the Epstein files and Nick, we have no idea.
Not going. How about this, Nick? It's not going away. We're not forgetting. I mean, there's no distracting from that. And so all these, it would be a sick thing, obviously, to do for these things to be a distraction. I just think that they're part and parcel of the program. That it was the program all along. Look, I mean, you mentioned Brooklyn mentioned that Marco Rubio is going up to speak to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee today, and what he said yesterday should disturb Americans. For I don't know how many months they were blowing up boats in the Caribbean, saying that this was all about drugs, even though the experts were saying no, fentanyl doesn't come from Venezuela, and we don't really get many drugs in this country from Venezuela. Marco Rubio put out a statement yesterday that really should disturb every American because it so undercuts the idea that this was actually about drugs and saving American lives, and makes clear that this was about the oil all along. I don't think anybody in the United States of America on any particular, orientation, political orientation, wants to think that we have been murdering people on false pretenses because we needed a reason to kidnap Maduro, to hold him here in the States until they start giving us their oil. Like there's something really sick about that. But what Rubio's statement to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee yesterday in preparation for his appearance today is, we are prepared to use force to ensure maximum cooperation if other methods fail. It is our hope that this will not prove necessary, but we will never shy away from our duty to the American people and our mission in this hemisphere. That is so misguided and so untrue and just frankly sick that we're going to have the largest deployment of forces in decades in Latin America, and we're doing that so we can steal Venezuela's oil. What have we become? What has this country become? And I really think that I hope that there isn't a right winger out there, that there isn't a MAGA person out there who really believes that this is something that the United States should be doing, that we're using the U.S. Navy to capture oil tankers and steal their oil in a raw act of piracy. And that, as I've been saying, since that happened, that this is all about Paul Singer's company forcing Venezuela to sign off on the sale of Citgo to Paul Singer. And that's what this is really all about. And it continues to look like that's exactly what it was. And how does anybody allow this administration to act in this way? That's not a distraction. That's the real thing. Now, we also saw yesterday that the VA Secretary Collins, who is a former congressman from Georgia, who was very active during the first impeachment of Trump, came out with a statement calling Preddy terrorist, or saying that it was the politicians in Minnesota that caused this thing to happen, and that the union represents workers at the VA has stepped in and said, wait, this is not, you can't do this. You can't say this stuff about one of our members. This guy was out there helping people out, and there's no way that he should be dragged through the mud because of raw partisan politics. It is the exact opposite of what the VA secretary should be saying about one of their members. And then you look at the record of the VA since Collins has taken over, and it's a disgrace. It used to take appointment times for new patients for mental health care used to take 35 days, and now the longest one, which is in Maryland, is 54 days to get help, to get mental health treatment at the VA. That they've fired so many physicians, 1,000 physicians, 3,000 registered nurses, 700 social workers, 1,500 schedulers, and 1,500 claims examiners have been fired by DOGE and other forces within the Trump administration, and that our veterans are being treated worse than they ever have been before under this administration, and that this guy is using his time instead to disparage one of their members rather than trying to get his hands around the problems that he's created and fix them. And even a Republican representative, Mike Bost of Illinois, who is on the chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, expressed outrage at the VA's lack of transparency and their inability to deliver services that are needed and sworn and a big part of what we owe to our veterans, and they're not happening. And then one last thing. As I understand it, Trump went to Iowa yesterday to speak outside of Des Moines, Iowa, and found himself with more protesters outside the building than supporters inside the building. And that's the kind of thing that we need them to see. And I'll go so far as to say that anywhere a member of this administration goes, they should be hounded. There is not a restaurant in Washington, D.C. or anywhere else in this country that Kristi Noem or a Marco Rubio or any of these people can go without being shouted at and yelled at and drowned out when they try to speak, and signs held up calling them what they are, and that they should not have a moment's peace. What was it that Russ Vought said? The OMB director said about federal employees, he wants them to wake up every morning knowing that they're not wanted and that their lives are going to be miserable, so that they quit. That's what we need to do to every single member of this administration. People need to make sure that they're out there, and if they see them, that they're ready. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was just a newscast. I think it was about the weather in some city, and I don't remember exactly where it was or anything. And in the background, some guy who was driving by and saw that there was a news camera, got out of his car, reached into the back seat, and pulled out a sign that said "Fuck Trump" and held it up over his head until the cameraman caught onto it and was able to move him out of the frame. That's the kind of rapid response and immediate response that people need to be prepared to do wherever these people show up.
Yes. No, and I noticed that Bovine was crying that our people can't go in and get have something to eat. They're not being allowed access to bathrooms. They're not. Oh, this is a shame. These are federal people. That a few years ago, you guys complained that a baker did not want to make a cake for a gay couple for a marriage. Well, you got that law passed, which basically says, hey, you can serve whoever you want to serve. That's your choice. Well, their choice is not to serve your ICE goons. Oh, well, you can't have it both ways. And it's the same way with this gun issue. All you say is, again, Rittenhouse is a great example. Well, that's his Second Amendment right. Well, he can be able to do this. Well, okay. Well, guess what? This was this man's right under law. He was following the law. He did not pull the gun out. You took it, which basically you're really not supposed to be doing anyway. And, your first complaint is that, well, we were in danger. I really love the comment that the police chief of Minneapolis said. He goes, we have dealt with hundreds, if not thousands, of criminals in the last year. Not one death. Not a single death. So it's like, come on. But you got Bovine saying, oh, well, they're yelling at us. They're blowing whistles at us. That's terrible. Well, you know what? Here's the bad news. Welcome to customer service, because that's all that happens to people in customer service. They get complained about. They get yelled at. They get, disrespected. What? Just because they put on the Gravy SEALs uniform, you don't think that they should be under those same rules? I'm sorry. Suck it up, Buttercup. Don't be such a snowflake. It's like stupid. Oh, these are brave patriots. Wow, brave patriots that are afraid of having whistles blown at them. Wow, brave patriots, my ass.
Yeah, and look, I saw a video footage of protesters outside the hotel that some of the ICE guys were staying in, apparently, and they had garbage cans down and they were pounding on them like drums to keep them up all night and to keep disturbing them. One of the guys from ICE came out with a shotgun and actually fired it, and that could have been a real escalation. The guy sounded drunk out of his mind, by the way. No, I mean it's really horrible because again, this is not like the elite troops,
No.
going out there and working for ICE right now. We saw a nice guy with a thick Hispanic accent saying to a protester's like right to his cell phone, "If you raise your voice, I'll erase your voice."
Yes, I saw
That
that.
that kind of thing is like. And by the way, one more thing about Kyle Rittenhouse that I just want to, it's kind of real parenthetical to this whole thing, but we bring up Kyle Rittenhouse. The jury never got to hear a videotape that was taken of Kyle Rittenhouse watching protesters or rioters in 2020 looting a CVS. And he was standing apparently with a bunch of other sort of vigilantes who were there to protect them, saying that he wished he had his AR-15 so he could kill people as they were coming out of the CVS. And the judge rejected the prosecution from playing that videotape. And if the jury had heard Kyle Rittenhouse saying, I want to commit premeditated murder,
Yeah, yeah.
I think the outcome of that trial would have been very, very different. And nobody should be holding up Kyle Rittenhouse as a role model for anything. What that kid got away with was utterly disgusting. And again, the system is what it is, and far be it from me to second guess a judge on what can and cannot be admitted as evidence. But I know since we got to see it, or at least I saw it, that video, or heard it anyway, that would have changed the minds of the jurors, and that trial would have been much different.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this answers the Nick's questions at all. I don't. Again, I don't. Trump goes back and forth all the time. It's like whoever's the last person to speak to him usually gets their way. And so yesterday he sounded a lot more conciliatory, and he pulled Bovino out and had some sort of like mea culpas there a little bit on that side. But today he's back out there again talking a lot of shit and claiming that the only reason that Minnesota is a safe place to be, and all the crime statistics have gone down, as was mentioned on one of the Sunday morning shows last weekend, that that Minnesota was not a city that was in a lot of trouble with crime and needed outside intervention by federal troops to get rid of the criminal element so that the city would be safer. Trump is now claiming that because he put ICE in there, the city is safer, and those crime statistics all of a sudden, are on his good side, not to his detriment. I don't know what to expect when it comes to Minnesota, but I do know, and I don't know what to expect when it comes to politicians in Washington doing the right thing and demanding that ICE leave Minnesota, because that's really is the thing that needs to happen as fast as it can happen. That they need to de-escalate this situation instead of making it worse. And I can't imagine that bringing Tom Homan in is going to make the situation a whole lot better.
And just to Nick, I hear that it's being reported that they're coming to your neck of the woods. The ICE agents are coming to Portland, Maine. So be on the lookout for that. And again, Nick, yeah, we're all very confused by this. Hopefully, somebody has mentioned to Trump that it needs to stop. And as Scott says, maybe the last person to talk to him said this isn't going very well for you. And maybe that's let's remember, Trump is very aware of how popular he is, even though sometimes he over exaggerates how popular he is. The fact is that he's got to see, unless he's totally, clueless, he's got to see where he's got some issues. And Homan, maybe, I don't know. Let's see what Homan does when he gets there. But the other two, let's see what happens to them. I saw that somebody in Congress was talking about impeaching Christine Holm. Knock yourself out. Get rid of her. All you have to do is just use the footage and use the statements she's made after people have been murdered. And that should be more than enough. That should be more than enough. And if it's not enough, those senators and those congressmen that don't vote to impeach her, hey, it's time to get rid of them and create ourselves at least a government that has some damn sense. Because remember, that person could be you. That person could be you. And if we've seen nothing, ICE has a tendency to shoot their guns off, even when they're not aiming it at somebody, and putting not only their own people, but the public at risk. And wherever there's ICE, there's going to be the public. And that's a good thing. But we always encourage everybody that's listening in to be careful out there, because these guys, as Scott has said so many times, these are the guys that can't shoot straight. So
Yep, and their guns discharge while they're falling down on the ice.
And isn't that hilarious? How
Yes,
about the administration basically saying, we don't want you to use the ice storm, because we have an ice storm here in South Carolina and other parts of the South. Don't use ice because it gives a bad, it makes ice look bad. So we have to change our language now because ice. So
Yeah, we'll have
hopefully
to come
answer
up
that.
with we'll have
Yeah.
to come up with another name. And as for the Epstein files, who was the now I'm drawing a complete blank. The man who was the head of the Teamsters, the one who vanished and
Jimmy
nobody
Hoffa?
can. Yeah.
Hoffa. Yeah, Hoffa.
Yeah,
Jimmy
Hoffa.
Hoffa.
Yeah, so the Epstein files, I'm sure whoever got rid of Hoffa is probably no longer living, but that's probably where the Epstein
I
files are.
wouldn't think so. I mean, considering how long ago that was.
Yeah,
I
so-
hear he's in Giant Stadium, Hoffa. He's built into one of the pillars, somebody said.
Oh,
Right.
okay. Well, maybe maybe that the Epstein files are going to be buried underneath the new, construction of the White House, or they're in Fort Knox, or who knows where. They gave them to Putin to bury somewhere. Who knows? I don't know if we'll ever see them.
No idea. All right.
No idea. All righty. So thank you again, Nick. We appreciate your questions.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium dedicated to providing solutions to social and political issues for NGOs and international government agencies. Through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research, the Phoenix Research Group advances understanding and practical strategies for complex challenges. The Phoenix Research Group is a division of the Phoenix Research Institute, the producer of the Nova Society podcast.